Daisy, we recently had a case, and for those who don't know, by the way, this is Miss Daisy Villanueva, our associate lawyer, one of our associate lawyers here at our office. We recently had a case where the state took a position, and of course, we took a position. This was a situation where the state of Texas was arguing and was adamant that they were in the right. When I say they were in the right, there was an officer who ultimately searched our client's vehicle. We believe that that search was unlawful. It was against his rights, against lawful, unlawful search and seizures, and we made a claim. We filed the appropriate documents in court where we argued to the judge, we need to have a full-blown suppression hearing.
Right.
Before we start getting into those details and facts, tell me a little bit about the circumstances that surrounded our client's case and why we were arguing that this was an unlawful search.
Yeah, so the issue that we faced was whether an officer can still rely on the smell of marijuana alone to search a vehicle. In our case, our client was pulled over a broken taillight.
That's right.
He approaches the passenger and immediately tells the occupants of the vehicle that he smells marijuana. And so our argument during the suppression, for the motion to suppress, was that it was not enough, that the smell of marijuana was not enough, given that CBD and hemp products are now legal in Texas, and that one cannot distinguish whether it's burnt marijuana or a burnt CBD roll.
Now, to add some context to that, because I think you did perfectly on that, but I want to make sure that our audience also understands what used to be the law was an officer could claim, hey, I approached this vehicle, I engaged in a traffic stop, and as I approached, I got the immediate strong odor of what appeared to be, based off of training and experience, marijuana. Marijuana, as everyone understands, in some states in the country, it's lawful, but specifically in the state of Texas, it remains illegal. Mm-hmm. And so it used to be the case where officers could claim, hey, I smelled this strong odor of marijuana. That gave them then sufficient probable cause to then search the vehicle that they had engaged in this traffic stop. Here, however, back, if I'm not mistaken, I think it was 2019, 2020, I need to get the exact year, what became legal was products stemming from CBD and hemp.
Right.
And so our position was, well, wait a second, officer. How are you now able to distinguish what is lawful and what is unlawful? Because these products, and I say CBD, I see, hemp and marijuana, they smell very similar. Mm-hmm. In many cases, they look very similar as well.
Right.
So how are you, based off of this training and experience that you're claiming you have, able to distinguish a product that is lawful from a product that is unlawful? This was the position that we were taking to say, wait a second, if this would have happened prior to hemp being legal, I can see that argument working. But now that it's really difficult, matter of fact, for the purpose of this video, we decided to go ahead and buy a legal CBD flower. And I'll let you know, it looks exactly, smells, this is from word of mouth, of course, smells like marijuana. Let's smell this. And so we were thinking, well, wait a second. And this is, matter of fact, something that we were going to use for purposes of the suppression hearing, but we'll walk you through exactly what happened. Take this from the vial. Let me make sure that the audience is able to see this. Look, they even roll it up to make it look like a joint. And so based off of training and experience, anybody who doesn't know is going to say, wait a second, this is a marijuana joint. But it's not. It's CBD, which is completely lawful, legal in the state of Texas. And so what ended up happening in our client's case is that officer then ultimately gets our client and the passenger out of the vehicle, places them in handcuffs, puts them in the patrol car, starts going through this vehicle in search of something. Right. We say, wait a second, that search is completely unlawful. Mm-hmm. Especially now that we have this distinguished and say, how are you able to understand which one it was?
Right.
So what is the law now that I've given that context to say, how are you able to distinguish? How are courts ruling because we did some background, we did some research on our case law before we even had the suppression issue. And we said, wait a second, let's understand how courts in Texas have considered how to best address this particular issue. What did you find?
Courts are looking at, they're supposed to look at all the facts.
Okay.
So it's the totality of the circumstances.
Fantastic.
So it is a case-by-case basis.
Okay.
And so it truly depends on how the officer is describing the smell. Are you saying that I smell burnt marijuana? I smell raw, freshly burnt marijuana? Or it all depends on how the officer is describing what he is smelling.
That's one, but I could also see an officer saying, well, wait a second, I asked the person, have you smoked marijuana? And the person says, I have. That's an admission that could potentially then use as the totality of the circumstances, right? He claims he smelled marijuana. He asked this person, there was an admission to actually having consumed marijuana. I'm just saying if it happened that way.
Okay.
In this case, it didn't.
It didn't.
And then ultimately, if the officer in plain view observes potentially what looks like marijuana or drug paraphernalia, which, pipes, bong, whatever it may have been, the totality of the circumstances in that particular case would then allow the officer to say, hey, in good faith, I then searched this vehicle.
Right.
But in our client's case, none of that existed, right? It was only a situation where the officer made the claim, I smelled marijuana.
I smell it. And I think that's where our role as attorneys come in, where we file motions to suppress and argue and present it, even if it is this is a case of first impression, right? That's what we get to make law.
It truly is, because in our, search of trying to determine how courts have ruled, it's really a gray area right now, where some courts are split and some courts are saying, hey, look, the training and experience that these officers have is sufficient to allow them to search the vehicle. Some courts are saying, wait a second, that's not enough based off of the totality of the circumstances should really be the prime example. We're taking a position. What is our position?
Our position is that it's not enough. And it's not enough because if that's the case, then anyone that smokes any type of CBD product and you get pulled over, you run the risk of you being searched unlawfully.
Against your will.
Against your will.
Against your legal rights.
Yeah, exactly.
This is what we have to make sure that people understand. Who you have by your side when your freedom is on the line matters most.
Right.
And as you stated, we are big proponents in making sure that if we see there's a chance, we're going to make those arguments in front of a judge, make sure that judge who's presiding over this case will seriously consider our arguments and hopefully take the side of justice.
Yeah, and what happened here was that I knew going into it and going into filing this motion for suppression that it could have gone either or, right? The judge could have agreed or she could have disagreed. And I spoke to the client and I let him know these are the risks, but I think that potentially we have a good argument here because you need attorneys that are going to take these risks, especially when there's a gray area in the law, right?
I agree.
And
I
so,
agree wholeheartedly.
It did end up getting dismissed. Not for the suppression hearing didn't go through, but it did end up getting dismissed. But it would have been a great opportunity for us to
establish
precedent.
Case law.
Yeah,
I agree completely. There's going to be another chance. There's going to be another case.
for sure.
If you're out there, you're smoking this legally, understand officers may take the position to say, hey, wait a second, that's marijuana. They may engage in searching your vehicle. We believe it's unlawful. If you find yourself in that situation, as Daisy just stated, call us. We will take action on your behalf.